lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan, and with me today I have Patrick Horvath with me, filmmaker. Now this is your big debut comic coming out, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. I had the pleasure of reading an advanced copy, and it is absolutely phenomenal. I'm so excited to have you on the show to kind of talk about the comic and why this project, man. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's something else, dude.
Thanks,
I
man.
mean it's so cool, and I'll get into it more because I want to talk about a little bit about yourself before we get to the book, but not often that I've been reading comic books since I was like 5 years old, so a long time. It's not often that you see something that like just kind of sticks out and grabs you and feels kind of fresh because there's so many I mean, look, comic book industry's been around since the 30s, right? So
Right.
It's just crazy. So I love the book, and we'll get into it, but very excited to talk to you about it.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome, dude. But anyways, let's talk about you. Let's talk about, I always ask people the first time they're on the show, how their love for comics started.
Well, I feel like, so just generally speaking, like comics as you generally know them now, I totally came into that during the speculator boom, like the early 90s when Image came up. I'm a child of the 80s. And then like I was finally coming into my own in the 90s, and that was my end point, basically. Like in terms of general comics as we sort of understand them in the industry right now.
Sure.
But prior to that, I'd been drawing and sort of doing my own sequential art, like as a child, making a lot of like, I was basically making like one panel pages, and I would make a book of just different stuff. Like one was like Frankenstein's Tea Party, and it was just like a random gathering of like myself, and I was in these books. So like we would like go and there would be different monsters gathering, and then we would go have a tea party at Frankenstein's house, or there was like I mean other stuff where it was like actual comic book heroes, where it was like hanging out at the park, and then the Flash and Superman showed up, and that obviously was really fun. So like I would draw these little books, and then my mom would help type the actual like the captions
that's
or
awesome.
whatever. Anyway, so then and I was always kind of drawing, and then I got into comics and sort of the professional, like actually buying comics and going to a comic shop and stuff by like I said, the early 90s. And then by like mid 90s, I was kind of drawing my own stuff. I started like drawing my own comics and stuff. A lot of them were just like these really crude whatever things that was just doing for friends. And then like one that was an actual like a little more ambitious, like maybe like 20 some page thing or whatever. And then that was about it. And then I just dropped it. And then I didn't get back into comics until like my early 20s. Like basically like a 10-year just like nothing.
Oh wow.
And then
Okay.
I had friends that were like, then I didn't know about like just other comics. Like I just didn't know that there were, more independent comics that were flourishing, like, and had been since like, for a long time. But like, especially like I was very ignorant of just anything, like even like Crumb or stuff like that. Like I didn't know about any of that stuff. And so I had all these friends that were just like, oh, well, you should read this book. Please read that book. Check this out. And then they would take me into, and I didn't know anything about Alan Moore. I didn't know anything about any of this. So that's how I kind of came into comics. And then that just grew to now. So probably like basically since the beginning, I'd say like around 2005 to now, I've been keeping tabs on comics and reading and buying and stuff. And so that's kind of how I got into that. And it probably wasn't until like 2010 that I was like, maybe I could do my own comic, but I didn't feel like I would be able to do anything professionally, because I stopped drawing.
Do you know
so,
why?
like,
Do you know why you stopped drawing? Do you know why you just stopped drawing?
Well, the film. So like I
Okay.
got into making movies, and then I was just like single track mind. I just want to make movies. And so I went to film school. As soon as I got out of that, I ended up making my own. I mean, like this is a whole other like life that I've had just like working on movies.
Yeah.
But I mean, like it was full on. I was very much like just I felt like I just needed to put every effort I had into making movies, which you kind of have to do if you want to make a movie, because it's so demanding. Like it's very it's a very arduous process of getting other people involved in the thing, because it takes so many people even on small things. And so I kind of felt like it was not anything else was going to be a waste of time if I really wanted to make a movie. And I did. I made several movies and they've all come out, and that's great. But it wasn't until like more recently, like I said, maybe I would say like probably the past decade, where I was just like, I really would like to make comics. Like I feel like I could do this. That'd be great, because it's an awesome avenue for narrative storytelling. And the threshold is very, to do it is very
Mhm.
easy. Like anybody can sit down and make their own comic. And so I kind of realized like I don't know why I stopped drawing. So like I basically just repicked up drawing again around 2010. After I made like the second movie I made after moving out to LA. And then after doing that, just had like post project depression, and then ended up being like, oh yeah, maybe I'll just start drawing and I can think of something, create it, and be done with it within hours. And what a concept after like having made a movie.
Mhm.
So like, because it just takes so long. Anyway, so yeah, so then I got into it that way. And then finally, after like 6 years of that, I finally felt that I could maybe do a comic that I would be happy with quality wise.
So you were just creating stories as well as art? Like, were you like during those 6 years, like
Oh,
leading up to it, or like were you just illustrating and stuff like
I
that?
was just drawing. I was just
Okay.
like getting down to fundamentals of how, and I did do a couple comics during that 6 years. Probably 4 years in, first thing I ever got paid to do was working with Josh Trujillo. And then he had this awesome little story that he was gracious enough to let me draw on. And so that was like my first like doing pages for another writer, and getting that feedback, and it was
Good issue,
awesome.
haha. Also,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And then before that too, I'd also done this like little graphic novella thing called Free for All. And so it was kind of baby steps for sure, like leading up to it. And then I finally, got into it. But a lot of that, like in between, was just all just like doing push-ups, you know what I mean? Like working on perspective, working on anatomy, like getting rendering down, figuring out what I wanted to draw, like figuring out like who I like, right? And letting
mhm.
that guide me. And then being like, okay, but we can't just be drawing like these people all the time. So like, let's just work with this and see how we feel. And then kind of developing your own style and all that. And also just kind of realizing like what I like to work in medium wise, and all that stuff. It's a bit of a process.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, film to me, film and comics like go hand in hand. Like when I was younger, like I too, like I was like, I want to do something with film. I want to do something with comics. Film always
Hmm.
felt very hard because like to me, like you even said, like comic books are a little bit easier, especially nowadays. Like comic books are very easy to kind
Oh
of get
yeah.
into.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
anybody can do it. All you need is like if you well, I can't draw, but if I could draw, like all I would
Sure.
need is a pencil and paper, right? Or if you want to
Sure.
write, you write.
Yeah.
But film was like always something that fascinated me too. It's just as I got older, it started to become more comics focused on where my
Sure.
passion and my love kind of like centered. I do want to ask though, you talk about the speculator boom, which I was aware of it, but not
Hmm.
as much aware until I got older. Did you ever read Wizard magazine?
Oh yeah, 100%. I bought Wizard magazine. Like I
Okay.
did all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Because it was very easy to join in the sort of I mean, I wouldn't call it like mania, but the enthusiasm, somewhere in between enthusiasm and mania of comics at the time. Be like, it's it's crazy to think of how much all this stuff could be worth, I guess. And like it was just, you're sort of caught up in it. Yeah, the early 90s were a wild time.
Yeah, I know. I've gone back and read some of those. I mean, well, obviously, I don't know if you're aware of cartoonist kayfabe.
Oh,
That
for
usually
sure.
okay, okay. So, like, going back with when they would start going through the issues of Wizard magazine, and you just see how, like, at least, especially pandemic, how similar stuff was
Oh,
again
sure.
with the speculator boom. People were throwing money away, like fabricated like prices going like this. It was like
Yeah.
watching the stock market again.
Yeah, man.
But it was crazy. It was a crazy time in the 90s. And so many people talk about like, oh, nothing good came out in the 90s. I
Oh
vehemently
no,
disagree.
yeah,
There is
totally
so many
disagree.
quality comics that came out in that era, and I don't just say that because of nostalgia. I think there was a lot of great stuff. Yes, there was a
Yeah,
lot of speculation stuff that shouldn't have made stuff go up in price, but that
yeah,
doesn't take
sure.
away from the quality, you
No,
know?
not at all. And I feel like anytime anyone says that, just as about as a blanket statement for anything ever, like music or films or whatever, it's like, oh, I don't like movies from the 80s, or like I don't like whatever. And you're like, I'm pretty sure you just haven't seen the things that I've seen, maybe, because like there's some insanely excellent stuff that happened during that time.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not aware of it. It feels stupid to discount it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what were some of your favorite comic books post that gap where you weren't really reading comics? And then what got you back into comics? What were some of the things that got you back into it?
Well, I mean, my friends were like, "Oh, well, if you haven't read like Black Hole, you should read Black Hole." And I was like, "Okay." And then like had my mind blown. I was like, "All right, like I see, I get it.
Yeah,
This
that
is
book's
excellent."
insane.
Like I mean, the first time I read Watchmen was around then. Like just different. There were definitely different uh books from various like points of the industry. Like I went through the Sandman series, and you know, I want to say like Chris Ware, I feel like those were kind of the big ones that I'd read at the time, where it really like it was a nice little mix of getting with stuff that was within the industry like Watchmen, um, and then also stuff that was just outside of it that was thriving. And like I read Mouse, and I read like, just like a lot of the sort of big ones that people were just like, well, if you haven't read this, like, you know what I mean? Like it's just like obviously you should
Yeah.
check this out
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's popular for a good reason.
Mhm.
And then, and even if it wasn't something that was totally my thing, I could completely appreciate the value that it had for the context of it. You know what I mean? But I mean, like all the things I just mentioned, like I loved. So it was definitely, those were like big ones for me as I was kind of re-navigating comics and what those could be. And I mean, like, and I also, there was like a kind of a gear shift when I, around like 2015, 2016, when I was like, I think I'm ready to start putting a pitch together and start pitching. And then it was kind of like, well, what's selling like literally right now? And that was the first time I started buying floppies again. And I did that, and then that just continued. But it was definitely like, and like stuff like that was like, I think Daniel Warren Johnson was doing Extremity at the time. He was like in the middle of book one
So
and
good.
two, and so like I got the trade of book one, and then I started catching the singles of book two as those came out. I think that's around the time where I like was very much like, okay, I would like to be part of this. Let me, check it out. And that was a huge book when I got back into it. His stuff's really inspiring. So
Yes.
it
I'm a
was,
huge fan.
yeah, me too. It's great.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
wonderful stuff. And yeah, and like I said, it was so inspiring, I think, because he's obviously a great artist, but there's something about his style that's so it's got such a vitality to it that it's sort of undeniable. And he's just a really sweet dude, it seems. So like that comes through in the work super strong. And I think, and I really respond to that type of earnestness. And so seeing all that, like he's got the goods and the heart, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of like, oh, this is great. Like so anyway, that was definitely like a big book kind of when I got back into it.
So are you excited for his Transformers book?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for everything he does.
Yeah,
I mean,
same.
it's like,
I've never been a huge Transformers fan, but when he
sure.
told me that he was doing Transformers, I'm like, all right. And then I added it to my pull list, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I have never seen Transformers on my pull
Yeah.
list. It
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
weird to me, but I'm fine with it. I think
Oh,
it's gonna
yeah.
be
I mean,
awesome for sure.
yeah, it's going to be great just by virtue of him doing it. And I say that I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, it's the awesome move of just kind of, you could do whatever, you could riff on whatever. And I would love to see it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's just always going to be great.
Mhm.
Probably like even, I
Yeah,
mean, it's like pizza. Like even if it's maybe not the best, it's awesome.
yeah.
And when it's great, it's like sublime. you know
Yes, I totally, I totally agree with you. You said, like when you were developing your style, how are you gonna like have your own thing, right? Like,
Mhm.
who were some of the artists that were kind of influential to you during that time?
Getting into comics and drawing, the two big ones were like Mobius or Jean Giraud, and then like Alex Toth. And like those were two I kind of really responded super well to their style, especially the Mobius stuff, because I really did like watercoloring, and he did do like traditional sort of painting on top of stuff. I mean, he obviously did other stuff that was colored otherwise, but the and his he has that sort of clear line, kind of light style line work.
Yeah.
And when I got into drawing again, I was very like, I don't know, second guessing myself all the time, and like what kind of instruments I should be drawing with. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna start with these like old technical pens. I had a technical pen set, and so his line work is he does a lot of it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I like this a lot. And let me just sort of work through what my little style and kind of see if I could even replicate any of this stuff or whatever. And that was a really good jumping off point. And then the Toth work was more, I started getting into brushwork more, and then spot blacking just to see what that would be like. And he was, I mean, his stuff's incredible. So like that just kind of seemed like a smart thing to, study.
Those are two great artists. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, I mean, like it
yeah,
was
I
kind of
can't
like,
I can't argue with you on either one of those. So
if you can get anywhere close to that, they're great. And I'm still nowhere close to this stuff, but I mean, like, they were really good places to start, I felt
mhm.
like. And it just seemed like you should have somewhere, because I didn't have any formal drawing training or anything since high school. And so I needed to kind of go somewhere.
No, yeah, I think I feel like for the most part, comic book artists that I've talked to, and I've talked to quite a bit, and most comic book artists don't have like the technical training. It's mostly self-taught, like
Sure.
maybe some go to the Joe Kubert school,
Dude,
or
I wish I did. And I
it's
only
because it's
say
because you saw
that
those ads in the comic books for
I
sure.
only
Yeah.
say that because like I feel like I see stuff now and I'm like, oh, cool. Like, and I respond to it. And I'm like, wish I would have seen that Kubert stuff, even the stuff he did in that Wizard. There's like a little like early, I want to say, like, I don't know when it showed up in Wizard, but there was like the kind of Kubert, like, here's like a little primer on how you should think about drawing, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, that stuff's great. And things like that, just fundamental drawing stuff. But I mean, I did find those books, and I mean, those were big to me. Like, if you just kind of look at like the Loomis style, Andrew Loomis style of how to break apart anatomy, or the George Bridgman stuff,
Mhm.
those were really big. Like when I finally stumbled onto them as I was kind of learning how to draw the figure, for sure. But then, like, I had like a moment where I kind of left those, like Mobius and Toth, and then found like Jorge Zafino and Alberto Brescia. And then those dudes were a lot more expressive, but still kind of building on. They felt like they were kind of the same world, kind of stuff I was responding to, but like it evolved and was like a lot more kind of wild and interesting. And
Mhm.
then I kind of started focusing on those guys. But yeah, I'd say out of those four for sure, like, we're kind of the big ones.
And so when did take me to, okay, so we mentioned a couple of your earlier books, but
Mhm.
Beneath the Trees is your first book, first solo book, right? First
Yeah,
title.
definitely. Yeah.
So how did that pitch come about? Was it your always your first idea that you wanted to get done? Did you have other ones and this is the one you chose? Like, how did the project come about?
Sure. The initially, and it kind of came through film, because I had worked on this film called Southbound, and distributor for that was The Orchard. And then Paul Davidson was one of the dudes that worked at The Orchard. And then later on, Paul Davidson worked on, he left. I don't know exactly what all he was into professionally at the time, but he was sort of the film TV guy. He had stepped in for a friend at IDW, and then he ended up stepping into a role that was more strictly film TV development stuff. And then he had and I think he's since moved on to something else. But there was this weird small moment where he was there, and then we had even developed like a graphic novel from a story idea that he had, and that didn't work out. But he was still like, he had shown my stuff to Mark Doyle, who was at IDW then, um, uh, as director of editorial when they were putting together their originals.
Hmm.
So then, and apparently Mark really liked my stuff. And so Mark and I had spoke, and then he was just like, I mean, you're obviously, you can write and you can draw. So I think it'd be great if we could just get you to on a book if you've got anything to pitch. And so then that was the first like, oh my God, okay. Yeah, I've got some ideas. And so I had like 6 different ideas that I pitched. And out of those, they all were very into Beneath the Trees. So that's just how that had. They were like, these are all great. We love this one. Please give us a full pitch for this. And so then I turned around a full pitch for that one, and then here we are.
Yeah, I'll let you give the elevator pitch because I don't want to step on your toes. But for everybody listening, watching that has not heard about the book, which I feel like is already garnering a lot of buzz between creators and on social media. Whoever's seen the images of the book I've only seen positive stuff. So for everybody listening and watching, can you give the quick elevator pitch of what Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees is?
Sure. I mean, it's kind of a mashup of like the children's books of Richard Scarry that focus on like the little animal towns and like these idyllic, post World War II little towns where everybody's got their little place, and there's the crossing guard, and then there's the librarian and the plumber, and everybody's got their cute little outfits and stuff. And then it's a mix up of that and then like Dexter, where within this town, their main character just happens to be is the bear who owns the hardware shop. And she happens to be a serial killer who's been thriving for like decades in this small town. And she's been thriving because she's very smart and calculated about how she goes about business. And she's smart enough to know like you don't kill in town, and for everyone else who knows her, they just think she's this, wonderful pillar of the community, and they love her. And so that's the setup for the book. And then the twist is that there's her whole concept of everything just gets upended. I don't want to go into super details
No,
of
yeah,
why
no,
it gets upended, but
yeah, no.
but yeah. So yeah, small town serial killer starts questioning their role in life in Animal Town.
Yeah, I think that's, to me, the minute I saw that first cover, which I'll throw up in the video for everybody listening and watching. You just watch Samantha dragging this like bloody bag across the
Yeah.
ground, dude, and I'm just like, what is this? I need to know what this book's about.
You know what's
And then
funny? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, and I was saying, like, I saw the cover and I saw some interior pages, and I'm like, this art style and what the story's about, it's just like you don't expect it. And I think that that's why I gravitated so much towards it. Like I'm like, this book will cause waves, like in a good way. Like people, this is such a buzzworthy type of water cooler type book that I think when somebody sees it or reads it for the first time, that they're just gonna want more. Because I know once I
Cool.
finished the first issue, I was like, I need the second one now.
Yes, excellent. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention, I don't know if I've got it here or not. I do. So like the bear with the axe thing, or no, sorry, the bear with the bloody bag was based on this drawing I'd done. If we're gonna show the video, I can show it. I made a notebook out of it.
Yeah, let's see.
Anyway, but I did this drawing maybe like I did this drawing in like 2012 or something, like almost 10 years ago, probably.
Wow. Okay.
And that's where the story came from. I
From
just
that
did this
drawing.
drawing randomly, and I was just like, oh, that'd be kind of funny to have, because as soon as I drew it, I was starting to say I draw a lot of like weird one-offs. I started doing like a daily drawing, right? For like years, I would do like a daily drawing of something for all practice. All of it was practice. And I wanted to try not to be precious about it. And so anyway, so like, and I would do this for years and years, and that was just just a random one. A lot of them, I have no idea what happens before or after this moment that I'm drawing, you know what I mean? But I like to give it a little scenario or whatever. And that one was just kind of, that's when the story just popped in my head after I drew that one. Not as fully realized as this comic is, but it was definitely like, oh, it'd be interesting to have like a cute town serial killer. And and maybe it's this bear. And then I just started like my brain just started glomming on to different stuff in my head, like the Richard Scary Town and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then that's kind of how it grew.
Yeah, no, I think, like I said before, it's I've never seen something like this done, and especially like your art style to match with it. You draw completely traditional, right? Are you doing watercolor on the
Yeah.
digital or on the board?
Oh no, it's all they're all it's on the page. And it's all like ink, and it's actually gouache that I just thin out. So it's almost like watercolor. And sometimes I keep it thick for stuff, but yeah, it's all painted on the page. And then I'll do cleanup and whatever in Photoshop that I need to. But the by and large, I mean it's all, yeah, I just have stacks of the pages now.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, because I love, like you mentioned, loving watercolor.
Mhm.
Watercolor is like one of my favorite things. I get that's why I love David Mack so much, because
Oh
like
yeah.
all his covers are watercolored, and like getting to see his originals. Like I can't, I hope I see at a show and I get to see some of those originals, because I just the color of it. It's so unassuming. Like when you see these bright colors, and then you see her cut the duck up and
Yeah.
separate the body, but like it's just, I don't know. It's such a perfect mashup that you wouldn't necessarily think of. At least me
Sure.
as a reader, I would have never thought to do something like this.
I don't know
Yeah,
what that says about me. I will say this.
yeah.
The whole duck sequence and what she does with the duck was heavily inspired by the Tom Petty "Don't Come Around Here No More" video. Um, and it's funny because like somebody had brought that up to me a while ago, and I didn't really realize how much that bothered me as a kid. It stuck with me a lot, and so that's how I ended up throwing that in there. And again, it's so weird how it shows up in that Tom Petty video. I don't know if do you know what I'm talking about? It's the
I
Alice
haven't
in
seen it.
Wonderland. Oh man, it's the Alice in Wonderland video for his song "Don't Come Around Here No More." And there's this part where um there's like the Mad Hatter and the rabbit and everything, and eating they're eating Alice. Like they're like she's like made up of cake,
Oh,
and
weird.
they're like, yeah, and then they're like slicing her up and then serving her, and she's like watching this happen to her torso and her body. And it really bothered me. It's like I probably saw it when I was like 4 or something, like when it was on MTV. And nobody who would just think that there'd be disturbing stuff on MTV at the time that like kids couldn't watch. I mean, I guess there was some stuff anyway. Shouldn't have seen it, but
Mhm.
it definitely paid off in the end, I guess, because it inspired a really bizarro serial killer dismemberment scene.
Yeah, that's a weird concept, that music video. I don't know if I want to watch it, but I kind of sickly want to see
Oh
it
yeah,
at the
check it
same
out.
time.
It's
Yeah.
weird. It's a weird video.
Like mentioned, like Samantha, she's basically she's a serial killer storybook bear, right?
Hmm.
What else can we expect? Because I know you don't want to like give too much away, but like what else can we expect with the book? Is this something that you see going past this? Is this like a nicely well one and done story that can wrap up at the end?
It's definitely designed as like a limited series. And I could 100% expand it if that opportunity pops up. But as it stands now, it felt strong to just get I mean, that's definitely what they were looking for when I was pitching. So
Mm-hmm.
so I just had the opportunity to tell this one little story, and who knows if it'll do anything more than that. But yeah, it's definitely yeah, I don't want to give anything away necessarily. I mean, it's kind of a wild ride, but the end game was definitely let's have a spot to stop. That would be all right for a trade, or if it was just going to be, I mean, I think I pitched it just as a graphic novel even. And then they were like, this could be a monthly. Because you've got these natural breaks and it just kind of works out. I was basically putting in the chapter breaks as issues. And then they were like, this maps out perfect if you just would be like, we would like to do this as a monthly. And I was like, okay, let's do that. so so
Yeah,
it's
that
it's been
ending of
cool.
issue 1 is I just love I'm not gonna say what the final line is, but the final line that Samantha says in her head, I'm just like, yes, dude, I can't wait to see like how that plays out. I mean, just like how do you put yourself in that headspace like when you're writing a serial killer? Like I've always kind of wondered that, especially with especially with a show like Dexter, right? Like
Sure.
mapping out those types of scenes, any type of movie, right? That really, but Dexter is like what was one of my favorite shows when it was coming out. So
Mhm.
that's why when I saw that description of like it's Richard Scarry meets Dexter, I'm
Mhm.
like, dude, this is for me. But how do you put yourself in that headspace when you're writing scenes like that and creating these scenarios for, I mean, it doesn't even just have to be a bear, but just a main character doing these kind of horrific things.
Yeah, I did research on serial killers, and which was really depressing. Like I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
Like it's so disturbing. And you just end up, it's so bleak. Anyway, but I did a lot of reading, and then and there was some pop culture stuff too, kind of, and Dexter was a total touch point, but I never actually watched more than a couple episodes of Dexter, just
Okay.
through circumstance. And then once I got into this, fleshing out this book, I was kind of like, obviously Dexter would be a great touchstone, but like I'm afraid that I'll like get too much from Dexter, and I don't want to get
Influenced it.
too influenced. So
Hmm.
I'm waiting till I'm done with this to watch it. I think I mean, it sort of like any character that I've ever done for writing, like I'll come up with a profile of this character. And I mean, it's not as formal as all that, but at least in my head, I have a strong notion of like likes and dislikes and what's driving them. And then you just sort of bounce the events off of this psyche that you've created, and then you kind of see how it happens, and like you start going like, well, I don't think they would do that, or like, well, yeah, they would do that, and whatever. And so it was just a version of that, even though it's just really twisted, of like why Samantha's doing what she does, why she decides to do it in the very peculiar way that she does it, what she's getting out of that. And then and a lot of it is this cold calculated execution of this sort of like, weird bloodlust that she has, right? And so the and she likes it all to be clean and like kind of
Yeah.
orderly. It's weird, but it's like a very orderly violence that she kind of needs to do. The problem is that there's like a chaotic element that shows up and is very problematic for her. And so that was the main thrust in terms of like character wise that really I could wrap my head around. And then everything else is like her bouncing around the world, with this, like she has zero emotional capabilities. Like she's not, any emotional connection she has is completely superficial.
Right.
Everything like is just a manipulation of just kind of like, she has her spot in this town, and she's basically the only one in this town that kind of sees the town for what it is a strange, weird, naive place that is virtual. Like almost nobody understands, you know, the world that she's kind of operating in. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so like that, she understands that, exploits it, and that's kind of how, that in my anyway. So that, in a rambly way, that's kind of how I put together like Samantha as a character, I guess.
Yeah, I think like just like, and I don't think this is spoilery at all, but like when she's sitting at the dinner table with her
Mm-hmm.
friend, and then so you have the contrast of that and what, and like she's a killer, but like
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's always been the interesting thing. I hate to say interesting about serial killers, but
It's
it is
fascinating, man. It's
fascinating
totally
because
fascinating. Yeah.
it's fascinating because like you put yourself in, like, you or I can't imagine, right? Like, why would you want to kill somebody in such a
Right.
gruesome way, right? Because we're not a serial killer, but the way that a killer is able to kind of, like, their brain just works differently than ours,
Oh
right? Like
yeah,
some of them, it's
100%.
just like that, especially like with Dexter. I think that that's why that show is so fascinating, is that he has this compulsion where he needs to do it, but then he's not really like a bad person, like, I mean,
Right.
he's mostly killing like people that deserve it, and I hate to say that, but like, but he's not, right? Like there's
Right.
just something in him that he can't help himself, and he
Mm-hmm.
just has this inherent need to do it. So you like watch, like, with like Samantha too, and and like she just has to do it, and she has to
Yeah.
do it in this way that's
And
like
she, I
so
mean, yeah,
precise.
she's a monster too. Like, I mean, it's very much like not cool what she's
No,
randomly
no, yeah,
killing.
yeah, 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 no.
And it was funny to me to make her so horrible, but still have her be. I mean, that was the kind of like that was the challenge of like, can you make a main character be so horrible? Because again, it's very and it's all by design. Like she's not like it's just so she can do what she wants to do undetected and keep doing it,
Mhm.
and it really doesn't matter to her who it is. Could be somebody, you know, that might deserve it, but most likely is just a completely random person going on their day to day, and then they just disappear.
Yeah, I think, but that's the great thing about this book is that if you replace these characters with regular people in the book, it reads completely different,
Oh yeah.
you know? And I think that that's what's so fascinating about the concept is that, yeah, on the surface, you're like, oh, it's storybook characters, like, but no, but that's the crazy thing about it is that you really get a completely different experience if these are human beings in the book. It's not the same anymore at all. It's
No,
just a completely different
I
story.
feel like the to me one of the most interesting elements to that is that it throws it in relief very starkly, because you've got like this, I don't know, kind of weird malaise, I feel like pop culture wise, in terms of like, I'm not gonna like, I've seen serial killer stuff, obviously, in film and TV, and you kind of already know how that plays out. But I think because of that, you already have these expectations of how it's going to go, sort of levels of like realism and whatever, and then you're kind of moving on to however else you think it should wrap up or whatever. And I feel like using the sort of cutesy world that it's in makes it very disturbing in an interesting way, so that you're not just like consuming it and moving on, but instead it's sort of more just sticking, it's sort of like sticking with you more. Like I do these things, the reason that I have the violence so grounded and graphic is because I want it to be impactful. Like I don't want it to be like a something that you can just consume and move on. Like I want it to be disturbing enough so that you're,
Still thinking about it and it sits with
yeah,
you
exactly.
because
Yeah.
it does sit with it does
Like I
sit with you.
definitely, yeah, I felt like I draw it and I feel horrible about what I'm doing to them. Like I was
Yeah.
like, this is, and I mean, there's stuff that's happening later on, and it's just like, I mean, people in the town are, there's horrible stuff is going to happen to them. So then and I just think to myself, I was like, I can't believe that I'm like doing this to people and whatever, because they're so cute.
Yeah. But it must be a different experience also illustrating it. It's
Hmm.
like not drawing human beings being dismembered. You're drawing
Yeah.
a duck or you're
Yeah. Yeah.
drawing
Yeah.
another, animal. I do want to ask too, like there's regular animals as well within this
Yeah.
world. I just
Yeah.
want to ask, I just need to ask, like, I mean, obviously I don't think this is the first time it's ever been done where there's like cutesy animals that are anthropomorphic, but then there's also real animals. But there's that scene with the regular bear walking through,
Yeah.
but then that fox, that image of the
Hmm.
fox sticks in my mind too. So
Sure.
so what is the reason behind it, if any reason at all, that there's real animals within this world?
I mean, in general, I thought I really wanted to do that because it opens up this whole. I mean, as soon as you start doing animal people, anything, it raises a ton of questions about like, is your world building? And then you're like, well, I mean, like, how much crossover from our world to this world is there? Like, are they different towns? Like, is there a New York, or is it like a different town? You know what I mean? Like, is there religion? What do they do for like, do they have organized sports? Like what like, and obviously there's a lot of similarity because it feels like it's just a lot easier to work with, but I'm still tweaking stuff enough. But then I mean, I again picked that up from like Richard Scary stuff because they have like animal people walking dogs and stuff. And I was like, okay, yeah, all right. And so like, and then I started thinking about, oh, and the other thing too, from a Richard Scary cover, it's one of the Busy Town covers, and they just have like a butcher shop. And you're like, that's so messed up. Like, what?
Oh,
Like, who's
I
working
never
at the
thought
butcher
about that.
shop? And so
That's
then you're
weird,
like, and
dude.
it's like a pig working at the butcher shop. And I'm like, this is so problematic. I love this. And so so that raised questions. And then I wanted to have this moment with the bear and Samantha, who's also a bear. And so it's like person bear versus animal bear. And the idea, I guess it was the idea that there must be some sort of, if we're getting into it, like the biological evolution of these animal people.
Yeah,
And you're like, I don't know why they've all kind of, become the way they've become, but like obviously they have. And there's some connection to these things. And I wanted to have that encounter in the woods of Samantha doing this like really weird, like to the bear's perspective, really strange thing with this, there's just all, it's very unnatural what she's doing, you know what I mean?
hmm,
And then to have that just like totally interact with nature in its fullest form of this bear just cruising around doing its thing, to plant a seed, which I mean, and this is going to come to fruition later through the book, of Samantha, like just opening the conversation of Samantha actually like getting introspective enough to start looking at what it is that she is actually doing.
hmm.
And then also, I mean, she kind of has come to this point where we meet her just by virtue of the way her brain works, and then her being smart enough to kind of do what she wants to do and feels driven to, right? And then I don't think she actually has ever questioned like why it is that she needs to do these things. And then a lot of this stuff gets sort of shaken up after issue one. And so like the bear is an element that kind of in nature in general is an element that is going to, tie into that introspection.
Very cool. Yeah, I figured there was a reason for it. I mean, it didn't feel like it was you just had it there for accident. But yeah, that image with the fox too, like looking off with like the bloody
Yeah.
leaf and stuff. So good,
And it
so
was
good.
also like that's the only part that sees her, that knows her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, that it's going to tie in later, but it's also like very much like she's leading this largely just interior life.
Hmm.
And the only audience that she really does have for it is nature under these trees doing her thing.
Yeah. No, it's phenomenal, dude. I can't wait
Thanks.
for more. I don't want to I won't spoil anything else. I want everybody to kind of like experience it the way I did, which is kind of, you know, fresh and stuff and whatever preview pages are online. But I did want to ask too, is this something like since you're doing it all yourself,
Mm.
right? Like how do you put together an issue? Are you drawing and then like do you do a full script for yourself? Do you do a loose outline? How does that process work for you?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I do. Before, like when I pitched this, I had a full outline for the whole book. And it was pretty dense because I wanted to have all the plot points, like the major plot points down, and then I wanted to have all the motivations for all the plot points kind of figured out, and then whatever ideas kind of popped up during that process. And so I had the whole thing outlined, and then I started scripting everything ahead. And I usually do layouts as I script. And so I basically I'd done the first issue layouts and then drew it. And then just for timing and trying to get the covers and everything like that, I ended up writing out most of the rest of the scripts for the whole run. Like the next I did like 4 issues and then did covers for the rest of the run. And then so I've got all the scripts almost except for the last one. And then now I'm just like chugging away, working on the scripts. I'm like halfway through 3 right now, and getting ready to start up 4 by the end of, or middle of next month. Yeah, so that's my process. I'm really good at having like I gotta know where it's going.
Hmm.
When I'm writing, I can't figure out. I'm really bad at organically just letting the story tell me what's up. And then also when you have, I don't know, it felt like with this story too, I kind of know where I needed it to go. So I had to outline first. But generally speaking, I just outline. Like I hate trying to figure out, like I've written whole screenplays where I was just like, where does this go? I don't know. And then I have like 200 pages of just garbage. And I'm like, this felt like a waste of time. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
why I did this. I was kind of hoping I would find something out about myself, and maybe I did, but it's nothing I would want to show anyone.
Yeah, I think that yeah, like this project again, I think that the way that you pace the story for this being like your first like story that's all you, I
Mhm.
think the pacing is great,
Oh,
the
thanks.
art's great. Is this how long is it I don't want to ask, since you're doing the like the gosh, right, which is basically like water, how long does it take you to do a page?
I mean, if it's about like a day and a half,
Oh, that's pretty quick.
maybe. It depends. I mean, some days are longer. And also, I don't know if you can see the cool little mural that our friend painted on the wall, but we have a child. And
Yeah.
so that's been an element too, where it's like just balancing, your time and everything like that. So sometimes it takes a day and a half, sometimes it takes a couple days. It depends. But generally it's not too bad. It depends on the page a lot and like what's happening.
Hmm.
And what all is being depicted, how much needs to get rendered, and then on top of that too, I'm still like learning, like every day still learning, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like when I'm taking on a new setting or something like that, and I'm just like, I've never quite done anything like this, and let's figure it out.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like it's got to be exciting for you too to like watch this thing come together and
Oh,
stuff,
for
and
sure.
like you're getting towards for you now. You're over the hump of the halfway mark if you're almost done with issue 3, right,
Mhm.
and get about to start issue 4. Have you? I know some people hate being asked this question, but like, have you already thought about what you want to do next, or
Oh yeah,
are you okay?
definitely. And the thing that's tricky is that like I don't know where I'm gonna be at by the time the trade comes out for this. Definitely gonna need a break, but I feel like I'll just need to reassess like what I can do project wise, what my family life's like at the time, and then also what other projects I've got cooking. Like I don't have another film project right now. Ideally, like I wanted when I first started thinking about doing comics, it's like it'd be terrific to be able to do like comic film, and then maybe go through life that way, that would be cool. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but I also am very keen on animation as well,
Hmm.
and I might want to start developing some animation projects. So I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, like if this is well received and I can work on either more of this or just another project or whatever, because I have a bunch of other projects that I would be happy to pitch and do, then I would gladly do that. I'm very open to whatever the next thing is. So yeah.
Very cool. And I mean, have you ever thought about? I know you've illustrated for somebody else, but have you ever
Mhm.
thought of writing for somebody else to draw, or is that
Oh
not?
yeah, I would love to do that. I'd be very happy to do that. And it would be the thing is that I have there's a ton of artists that I love whose work I love. And it would be so cool to work with them. But I feel like I need to start doing the conventions, which I'm going to be doing next year. And meeting people that way, and honestly, probably gauging who would want to work with me on a project that way. Because it always seems like everybody's so busy working on everything else that I'm just like, they're too busy. I don't know, and I don't know who would want to work with me. And I honestly feel like that's one of the best things about conventions is that you can go and actually just interact with people and get to know them and see like, oh yeah, we would work really well together. Let's talk more. I have this great idea, etc. But yes, I would love to write for somebody.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, dude. I mean, I think that this, like I said, I think this book is it has that feeling for me. Like, I mean, I don't get that feeling all the time. I don't like where you just like you think that this book could like just do crazy like with fans
Oh,
and
thanks, man.
critics and stuff like
I
that.
hope
So
so.
yeah, I hope so too,
Let's
man.
cross these fingers, Ryan.
I both right here, dude. But
Right.
yeah, dude, I love the book. I'm very stoked that I got a chance to talk to you about
Oh,
it.
thanks,
And
man.
yeah, dude, I'd love to do like a creator commentary with you. Like,
Oh, yeah.
once issue 1 drops and we can actually like fully like tell the world about it, I
Would
would
love
love to
it.
do
Yeah, I
that.
would love it.
Do a nice flip through of it.
Yeah, yes.
That'd be awesome. So for everybody watching and listening, get out there. FOC for this book, which means final order cutoff, is September 11th. Get to your stores, pre-order the book. and October 18th is when the book drops. I know you got a couple signings that we're gearing up for in LA.
Yep, we've got Collector's Paradise coming up on October 18, and then on the 20th, on that Saturday, is that the 20th? Is going to be 21st on Saturday. We're going to be at Things from Another World over at Universal City Walk. And we're going to be signing there on Saturday as well. So yeah, Collector's Paradise on October 18, October 21, Things from Another World at Universal City Walk. Oh, and it's going to be a Collector's Paradise in Pasadena. So make sure you go to the Pasadena October 18.
Also, signature. They also are offering a signature.
And we're doing
yes,
we're doing a signature series that's going to be exclusive through Collector's Paradise, and it's going to be 1 through 6, all signed by me. And then you can even order online, and it will ship worldwide.
Yes.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, and I will drop the link for the pre-order for the signature series there.
Oh yes, thank you.
So you can pick up that book. I know some, no extra charge either. That's the important thing to note, is that it's still cover price. So you're getting the book signed, cover price, no extra charge, and you can get it anywhere. So get out there, support the book. And Patrick, it's been a blast talking with you.
Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, I can't wait to do this with you again sometime.
Yes, I would love it.